Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. The British Court of Appeal has declared the deportation of migrants to Rwanda as illegal. Now, there are big questions as to why, this of course has been declared, and the reasons, the UK of course initially started the whole plan of deporting migrants to Rwanda. We're speaking this morning with Darren Bartlett to of course explain these things further. Good morning, Darren. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
We're doing well. This story, of course, when it broke a couple of years ago, has come with different opinions, basically. But this is what we are currently seeing. Was this expected? Did you expect that this is how it will play out? And is there any reactions from Rwanda?
I expected this to happen. I actually, in some thoughts, some of the reasons that were given by the asylum aid that appealed the decision of the High Court, as to why they shouldn't deport immigrants to Rwanda. The reasons they gave at that time, they made sense to me, and I felt like I think they actually have a point. And some of the reasons they actually gave, and that the Court of Appeal went with, is that one, whether actually Rwanda is a safe country. Now, I'm not saying that Rwanda is not a safe country, but as a small country that is just trying to develop and also has issues in the neighborhood, and look at the ability for them to manage and facilitate immigrants in their country. They already have an influx of refugees from DRC. I thought that they couldn't handle, but on financial grounds, of which the UK government came out and gave a whole package. And in the agreement they signed, there was a package that they would take care of every individual with a tune of up to about 165,000 UK pounds. But for me, those were the grounds whether the country had the actual ability to take care of the immigrants here. But according to the UK Court of Appeal, one, for them, it is issues to do with safety and whether the third world country that they are taking these immigrants to is safe, one of them, and that the processes that they, were going through, the UK government was going through to deport these immigrants, that it was illegal. And that's why they say that they're reversing this decision by the High Court, and they found deficiencies, a lot of deficiencies in the processes, which made contravene, according to them, that they contravene actually the Article 3 of the European Convention of the Human Rights. So on those grounds, the UK Court of Appeal said, no, this cannot go ahead. What disturbs my head, and this is not just a personal opinion, is that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, Suella, saying that they are good. They're very much committed to this Rwandan policy, and they want to do away with gangs entering into the country. Now, this is where I beg to ask a question like, so are you saying that Rwanda is the one that maybe needs the gangs, or all immigrants that come into the country illegally are actually gangsters? Or do you have a process to actually sieve out who gangsters are? And then why Rwanda? Why not Botswana? Why not Namibia? Why not, other countries that actually have less conflict on the African continent other than Rwanda? So for me, that's where, questions really come out. And also, we need to understand why people, seek asylum in other countries. The decision for you to leave your country that has conflict to go to a country where you feel like there's rule of law, there's safety. I mean, there's so much human rights protection out there. And you choose to, send immigrants to another country, which previously has been mentioned for abuse of human rights. So it just doesn't make sense for me. There's just a lot of history to, rather than just committing to this policy.
Pretty interesting, and I got to see the, video clips from the sitting yesterday, and, when the question was asked, if anyone was in support, nobody raised their hands, so there's definitely, I feel like there's something, going on also behind the scenes from the first day the decision was made and till date. But, Olive?
Yeah, I mean, let's still talk about regions that have conflict, and let's move the conversation now to DRC. Regional blocs have demanded that there be an immediate withdrawal of armed groups in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We've seen that the UN peacekeepers have said that this is a premature move, the UN peacekeepers in the DRC, and I want to know if you share same sentiments, and also to ask what were the specific measures that were proposed by the quadripartite summit of regional blocs to address the conflict in the Eastern DRC?
Well, when the four regions sat together, for them, they looked at it as how do we, stop this to become a humanitarian issue overflowing into other African or East African central countries, especially with the influx of refugees and also having they expect that in the next 5 years, about 25 people will be displaced from the DRC Congo. That is such a huge number. Now, they have accepted that they are going to send in more troops, and of course the SADC region is sending in troops that will be in DRC. But there's just one problem here, and we don't know whether DRC is actually ready for what is going to happen after the UN peace mission leaves. And there's also a deadline for the East African Community, security forces to leave DRC. So it's in a place of, is DRC actually ready to be independent? Because what these regions are doing, these regional blocs are doing, is trying to prepare DRC to be ready to handle its own security issues by helping it create systems like amnesty, demobilization of these armed groups here, and also trying to resettle the people who are in these armed groups like the M23. But if I give you some history, in 2013, I know that the M23 were demobilized. I don't know how they remobilized again themselves, but at that time, when they were demobilizing, some of them joined the government forces of DRC. And others accepted to go into it and be part of the government, but others felt like the agreements that they made at that time to join the forces and also to be that they will be in charge of the security in the eastern part of Congo just didn't happen. So they have their own grievances as why they had to, come back again in 2022 and foregoing the agreements they had in 2013. So are they ready to actually handle their security concerns when DRC, when the UN mission leaves, when the East African Community forces leave? You've had Tshisekedi himself come out so many times and say that if the East African forces are not actually going head-on with the M23, they better leave. But it's not only M23. M23 is just one of a fraction of the so many armed groups that are there, including the FDLR, including the NDF, and so many more who are in control of areas in Eastern DRC. So the solutions are just trying to disarm them and kind of put them back into society, reintegrate them into societies. But will it work is the big question.
Well, that's a really big question, and Felix Tshisekedi does have a lot of work, if he needs to protect, those areas. Same thing with William Ruto and Paul Kagame, everyone in the, eastern part of the continent. There's so much work that needs to be done. I remember when you spoke about some of the reasons, it's been difficult to end these armed groups and their influx into different parts of the continent, smuggling and lies and corruption and some of all these things, just it's difficult. Now, let's talk about Somalia. It's a national army, of course, does face some challenges with security responsibilities at the end of 2024. Tell us about that and what support has been provided to strengthen their capabilities to once again also fight insurgency.
Not so different with what is happening in DRC. Now, Somalia has been, in fact, for a long time, we would say that they didn't have a recognized government. Since 2007, they didn't have a recognized government in place. And they have been fully depending on the AU mission that has been providing security as the army security in Somalia. They have been depending on EU and UN donations. They have been depending on the Ugandan soldiers, the UPDF who have been there, the Burundian soldiers who have also been there. But it's time up. The Somalian government is saying, now look, the AU mission, which actually transformed into the MT, which is the African Mission Transition in Somalia. But by this June, they're supposed to be, about 2,000 soldiers are supposed to be leaving, and then at the end of the year, the MT's whole army is going to have left Somalia. And Somalia believes that for them, they are going to be taking charge of their security issues. But they're coming at a time where you see the Al-Shabaab are attacking Kenya, in the northern part of Kenya. I'm actually speaking from Nairobi today, and the news does not seem to end about the attacks of Al-Shabaab in places like Lamu there and in the northern part of Kenya. And also the Al-Shabaab just recently attacked the UPDF and killed about 54 soldiers there. There have been numerous bombings in town, Mogadishu hotels, and so on and so forth. So the assurance that the people of Somalia are going to be safe when the African Transition Security Forces leave is so much in question. However, their security leaders say yes, these issues will happen. But with the trainings that they have acquired from the UN, from the Ethiopian forces, they have also been trained by also some Eritrean forces, will give them ground, to be able to take care of their own security cases. But, so many security experts would say this is going to be a very difficult thing.
All right.
Because, I'm sorry, I'm going to chip in this. To understand Somalia insecurity issues, in my belief, and what I have read about Somalia for a very long time, is that you understand that their politics runs around clans, and it's believed that some of these clans actually support the cause of the Al-Shabaab and other groups that are. So if you can't solve the clan issue, it may be very difficult to solve the security issues in Somalia.
That is really, really shocking, and it just paints a really grim picture as to what Somalia is up against. And of course, not just Somalia, because these things continue to spread to different parts of the continent. The western part of the continent still has its own security challenges, and it's just really, really heartbreaking. Because my question, really is how much longer. All right, Darren, thanks for your time. As always, good to see you on Fridays. We wish you a great weekend. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.